Manga has been outselling American comics for a pretty long time now. The comics industry has just gone super downhill, with storytelling becoming about only pushing narratives and agendas. A ton of the artists are just super mediocre, and the point of most manga is simply for people to enjoy it, not to pander to specific groups of people or to write the most diverse stories possible. And it's no surprise that comic industry pros, we'll call them, are pissed off at this. The fact that their industry is dying, while another is basically stealing their readers and thriving, and now comic writers are calling out manga writers, accusing them of course terrible things. So we are going to read this Bounding into Comics article, but before we get started, if you enjoy the content that I create, make sure to subscribe to the channel, share this video if you end up enjoying it, follow me on social media like Twitter or Minds for updates, and if you really like the videos and live streams I create, consider becoming a Dark Titan via Patreon for just $1 a month. All of the links are in the description, and of course, I appreciate all of your support. Power Girl co-creator Jerry Conway wants to see manga creators taken to task for their rampant sexism and misogyny. The Western comic book industry has officially begun to turn its sights on the Japanese entertainment industry, as Power Girl co-creator declared that he wants to see the manga industry taken to task for their rampant sexism and misogyny. Now, they've been attacking fans, basically saying it's not our fault that you don't like our writing. You know, you're the ones who don't like diversity and inclusivity. And while most of us do, all these writers do time and time again is shove their politics in our faces and not give us good stories. These writers don't know how to give us good tales anymore. They just resort to blaming everyone around them and not themselves. So it says, on May 11th, presumably prompted by the recent situation surrounding J. Scott Campbell's response to a Tumblr artist's fixing of his work — this is something I did talk about in another video — it says Conway took to his Twitter to bafflingly assert that while American comic book artists are taken deservedly to task regularly for outrageously sexist treatment of women, but rarely do I see any commentary on the rampant sexism and misogyny of manga, and manga is incredibly popular with younger readers. As proof of his claim that manga was filled with quote-unquote rampant sexism and misogyny, the veteran comic book writer pointed to the cover image of Dungeon Builder: The Demon King's Labyrinth is a modern city — what a weird name for, you know, a manga. I mean, some manga names are crazy — fourth volume, which depicts the series' busty ancient elf monster Aura in her standard scantily clad outfit. I actually think that this art is pretty damn good. I usually honestly like the art of manga, but I think that this is of course very triggering, we'll say, to SJWs and Puritans on social media, saying, oh my gosh, I can't believe that, you know, you're objectifying a woman like that. I actually think that this art is pretty good. Look at the guy in the background. I haven't actually read this. I don't know much about this, so I don't know the characters' names at all. But it's something I'm going to be looking into for sure. But if you look in the back, look at him just staring at those milkers. Scrolling down, it says, in a follow-up tweet, Conway continued, not to mention manga's rampant sexualization of teen and preteen young women in the media that in America is mostly popular among younger readers. Now, he finishes off his tweet with saying, do we ignore this because we're afraid to criticize non-Western cultural tropes? Now, I don't know why I always need to point this out, especially to someone who's a comics writer, but we are talking about fictional characters living in fictional worlds doing fictional things. These characters are not real people. If we were talking about a manga or an art where a character's a kid and maybe it was based on a real person, then yeah, I'd see why people might be upset by it, but we are not. They are not real people. These are drawings. Is it really that offensive? Why are people so offended by the female form to the point where they feel like they have to cancel anyone who's creating this art or writing stories based on these characters? And he also says, In media that in America is mostly popular among younger readers, do we really ignore this because we're afraid to criticize non-Western cultural tropes? Now, the ideas of social justice, inclusivity, diversity are all different in Japan, and these are stories that, yeah, are written for global audiences, but still fall under the societal norms that exist in Japan, not in the West. They don't have a contingent similar to the West that pushes woke ideas. Their societies just completely different than ours, and these stories are coming from writers who don't see the same way that the woke West does. There's no woke East movement, and I'm sure there's people in places like Japan who agree, but they don't have power over the manga industry like they have power over the American comic industry. Now, scrolling down, it says he then presents another manga cover in support of his argument, this time comparing this. And I think that this is again a good art. I think that it's decent. It's pretty basic, but I don't think that it's bad. It says there's no way around it. The arguments made in Conway's tweet are disingenuous at best, outright lies at worst. I agree with this. So scrolling down, it says, first off, his claim that sexualized depictions of female characters are inherently sexist and misogynistic is an outright lie, and ironically a misogynistic one, given the mere existence of a large number of female artists who enjoy drawing sexy characters. If we scroll down, we have Bayonetta here. I mean, this is huge. A ton of very popular sexy female characters who have been created were actually created and designed by female in manga and in video games, so of course they don't point that out since they just want to push their own narrative. They're literally just wanting to hinder their competition by suppressing freedom of expression, saying it's disgusting, it's terrible, you guys should be against the art that they're creating and the stories they're writing. It is freaking disgusting and, most importantly, pitiful. Now it says yet more egregious is his claim that he has only ever rarely seen criticism of manga being sexist, as the only way this could be true is if he was either only getting his anime and manga news from straightforward news-only trade outlets, or he was outright blind. This is very true. I talk about this all the time, but on social media, fictional female characters are attacked all the time. Females in manga and anime, I mean, even in video games are attacked if they're too sexy, if they're too attractive, if their outfits aren't what these Puritans want them to be. Unfortunately, there are a lot of attention seekers out there who attack anything that they can to get people upset, to get people mad. Now, scrolling down, it says, for example, in 2019, self-righteous fans of My Hero Academia took issue with how the anime adaptation's depiction of a character featured a more defined bust than her manga counterpart, criticizing this change on the ground ranging from things like misogyny. This is very unfortunate that literally artists aren't allowed to do what they want, especially a character like this. This character looks perfectly fine. I think that this character looks good, but of course people get upset over things, and half the time I don't even feel like these people are genuinely upset. They just want to act upset so they can get people upset and kind of be, the hero. Oh my gosh, I called out all these things that we think are disgusting. Look at me, I'm such a good person. I feel like that's the mentality behind calling out things like this. But scrolling down, it does give a couple more examples. Just 15 days later, the Shonen Jump series Yuna and the Haunted Hot Springs was vocally chastised on social media by Western critics for a risque pinup of the series character featured in the manga magazine's 48th issue of that year. I talk about these situations all of the time, but people are constantly attacking, attractive female characters. It says, given the fact that Japanese manga has absolutely overtaken and blown out the Western comics industry in terms of sales in the United States, Conway's dishonest pearl clutching feels like more of a desperate attempt to attack an industry competitor rather than an earnest critique born out of any sort of principle. Of course. After all, why else would he attempt to appeal to the very same censorious ideologues who would just as soon happily take Conway himself to task for creating what they consider one of the most popular sexualized characters of all time? And of course, we're talking about Power Girl. Power Girl is extremely sexualized. She's a sexy, attractive, strong female character that, he did work on. And of course, we know that he would be attacked for this. The same people that are calling out anime and manga would go after him if he said one thing wrong, he did one thing wrong, if he created a new art that they didn't like. I think that this honestly all boils down to publishers and writers actually knowing their audiences. Besides the occasional instances of things like corporate censorship that happen when books are translated to the West, manga readers are getting what manga readers want, where if we look at the majority of comic book fans, literally nothing's written for us anymore, and that's why we don't buy them anymore. They're being written for people who don't buy or read comics, yet these companies still think that they can make money off of these people, and it's ruining their industry. There's been a noticeable decrease in the amount of Western graphic novels to manga that's being carried in even large chains like Barnes and Nobles, and in most cases, their manga sections are vastly larger than Western graphic novels, even with manga being readily available on the internet. This is a disappointing situation. It is disgusting and pitiful to see these people trying to tear down another industry because all of their writers are going to that industry instead of the comics industry. Comic book pros out there, maybe you should just try to write good stories for actual fans and not try to appeal to the people who will attack you and try to cancel you at every chance given. But let everyone know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to give it a like, share it, and subscribe to the channel. And of course, if you didn't, make sure to give it a dislike. I appreciate your support either way, but I will talk to you all again in the next video really soon.